Welcome, everybody. If you know Molly, you know she can be summed up with complex simplicity. She is fiery, she's passionate, she's tenacious, she's invested, she's nurturing, she's caring, she's committed, she's confident, she's courageous, she's demanding, she's excited, she's informed, she's meticulous, she's eager, she's patient, and she's kind. For each of those words that were just mentioned about Molly, we could all probably share 10 stories that explicitly gets at each of those words and who she is. For those of us who have had the privilege to work, play, and learn and grow with Molly, we also know she can be kind of an enigma, simultaneously being polar opposites, such as loving and hating. Warm and cold, close and distant, jovial and pissed off, respected and feared, a realist and a dreamer. It is sometimes exciting to see which Molly you're going to get. And one of my personal joys is to go in her office and press her buttons and see if she is going to erupt with anger, or give me that amazing laugh that we all know who Molly is down the hall. To most of us, she is a mother, taking us under her wing, protecting the new babies of the HPHP family, while driving them to excel and accomplish. And once they have grown up, and she lets them free, expecting them and requiring us to steer the ship. Most importantly, Molly can probably be summed up in one word. She is our friend. Molly, it is now your turn, in our honor, to have you teach us one more thing. And then as friends and as family, go have that beer.
Welcome. I want to say welcome to different groups that are here, just to let you know. I'm welcoming my former students. I'm welcoming my current students. Yeah. And hopefully I'm welcoming some of you that I get to teach next semester. Yeah, where are they? Ready? Good.
Smart.
I got you. All right, got it covered. I thank you. I'm welcoming also the Teaching Learning Assessment Committee members and some of my campus colleagues, my athletics department friends and associates out there. By the way, some of those people in that athletics department were also former students. You kind of get in both of those categories. Thank you to my department friends and my colleagues in the college. I thank you for coming. I really am so excited. As I was welcoming each of you, I was like, you are so much a part of my life. I just, my excitement just grows and grows and grows and grows. But let me keep going. I got more people. I have to tell you a special thank you and welcome to my comrade, my friend, my golf partner, Tim Rudin. Where are you? There he is. He is the Human Performance Laboratory Director. He's been with me for, and I say that, and Carol's not angry with that, by the way. So he's been with me for 20 years, and I'm telling you, he has made everything that an exercise physiology professor ever dreamed of happen. There's nothing that I've ever needed or wanted as a professor, in life that he hasn't been able to help me with. And I'll never be able to thank him enough. So I welcome you, Tim. I welcome your wife, Carol. And I welcome my goddaughter, my goddaughter, Katie. Thank God I don't have any grandchildren. I know, they thank me too, my sister says. A special welcome, some of you have met them, but a special welcome to my longtime village people. Now, you may not have heard this, but I have a group of 10 people that flew in. I've been friends with them since I was a child, and one of them I was a baby with. And so we've been in each other's lives. We've gone through mother's deaths, father's deaths. We've been through weddings. We've been through everything. And they flew in just for this. And fortunately, they let me know a week ago that they were coming. Otherwise, I might be on the floor right now. Okay? So I thank them for coming. And I got to tell you, my best buddy, my role model, my sister Cindy, she's the director of this entire show we're putting on today, okay? She's getting it all going together. And they've all traveled from, Jan's from New Jersey, and the rest of them Missouri and Kansas. And so I just want to thank you. I know the effort has been big for you to get here. So welcome. With that being said, I want to talk, can I do this? Okay. When I got this call from Colleen, who you heard from, it was 6 months ago. And she said to me, I had been selected to deliver the last lecture in October. And my thought was, cool! Wow! And the reason was, first, is somebody nominated me. They must like me, all right? And number two, somebody selected me. And I'm like, wow, how cool is this? Then the reality hit. What the heck are you going to talk about? All right? So, anyway, I know a little bit about last lectures. Because, hang on, there it is. Yep, okay. Oh, it'll come later. All right. I know it because I have this book. It is the book, The Last Lecture by Randy Koch. And I had bought this book about 10 years ago. It's a 2008 edition. And I bought it to read on an airplane. That was when they wouldn't let you open Kindles. All right. And so you had to have a real book. And I read it, and I bought it because the inside cover states, and I have to quote this, a lot of professors give talks entitled The Last Lecture. Professors are asked to consider their demise and to ruminate on what matters most to them. What wisdom would we impart to the world if we knew it was our last chance? What would we want as our legacy? And at the time that I purchased the book, I had no premonition that I would one day be able to give this last lecture. I just bought it because I'd read it was an entertaining and inspirational book about teaching. So I bought it, and lo and behold, it taught me a little bit about what a last lecture is. That wasn't enough. I needed a little bit more direction. So I did what most people do these days. I Googled last lecture. When I started my career, we didn't have Google, all right? So at any rate, I sat in my office and I Googled last lecture, and I was able to pull up several in the internet world last lectures from different professors around the country. And some of those were actually Weber States. And one of those lecturers is Forrest. He's at the back. He's one of our colleagues, former last lecturer. Forrest Crawford from the Teacher Education Department. Brad Carroll from the Physics Department had a last lecture on there. And Diana Kawamura from radiology science had one up there. And what I noticed about each of those was that they really talked about their life journey relative to their discipline. They would talk about how they became a physicist or what led them in the direction of teacher education, etc. And so with those considerations, I decided that that's kind of what I wanted to do, somehow or another weave my personal history into exercise and sports science. But the really cool part that kind of nailed it for me was I shared this, where's Cass? I shared this dilemma with Cass last year after graduation. We were walking out to the parking lot. And I said, what do you think? And she says, I think you need to think about that article that you had, the interview, in last year's fall edition of the Wildcat. And the whole issue was about how great women's sports is at Weber State. What a great year 2016 was with women's sports. Women's basketball coaches here, where I end up, there she is. They had a great season. Women's softball coaches here, where are they? She had a great season. This whole article was about how successful Weber State's women's athletic teams were. And I like this because what it says is how fiercely competitive they were, and they are, and how playing like a girl is a superlative comment that is not a derogatory comment. That was the best it could get. When you play like a girl, that's as good as it gets, all right? And I had a little interview piece, as you can see here, and that interview piece was done by I don't know what I can't remember her name, but at any rate, she wrote this piece, and she talked about both to Amy Crosby back there, our senior woman administrator and our associate athletic director, and I, about what it was like before Title IX and what it's been like after Title IX. So it was a pre-post Title IX piece. And so that's kind of the thread that I want to talk about today, is what it was like growing up in those pre-Title IX times. And not because I want to complain and whine, because I am not ever going to do that. I'm privileged to have lived the life that I lived. And so that's what I kind of want to talk about. So this is the story I want to tell. I've identified the last lesson I want to teach, and I have the legacy I'd like to leave behind. But I'm not going to complain about what I didn't get to do. I'm just going to talk about it a little bit. I kind of found the final way that for me to talk about this today when I read about in an interview done with Billie Jean King in a movie that was just released called The Battle of the Sexes. And for those of you who are way too young to know about that, in 1973, Billie Jean King, a professional tennis player, played Bobby Riggs, a professional tennis player. And it kind of broke the world wide open because she blew his socks off, right? And she continued to promote women's sports the rest of her life. And so that's what that movie is about. But in that movie, it says, so this is my entertaining history lesson with a few take-home messages in the end. It's not really a rant and a rave. It's a few little stories. So with that being said, I grew up in Liberty, Missouri. So here's Kansas City. And I need some more coffee. Okay, there's Liberty right there, all right? Northeast of Kansas City. And that Liberty was a small town at that time. It had a population of less than 10,000 people. I am the second daughter and the middle child of Sally and Gordon Smith. My dad played football in high school, and then he won a scholarship and went on to play college football at the University of Missouri in Columbia for a couple of years. And then he got called to be a pilot in World War II. So that's he liked all sports. He liked all levels of sports. He liked any kind of sport. But he really didn't play anything after he got out of the war. He occasionally would play around in golf, but he didn't stay as an athletic participant. He had to make a living for his family, and he kind of left sports alone. Then there's my mom, and she liked playing activities too. She's the one on the right, by the way, okay? And she played activities as a girl, and she enjoyed attending athletic events and following sports as well. I remember one time I went home to visit her in the later years of her life, and I walked in, she said, "Did you see that guy pitched a no-hitter today?" And I'm like, "What?" You know, she's like, if you know my mom, it's a funny thing. I'm like, how does she know that, right? Who cares? Most of you don't even know when a person pitches, but here she is. She's telling me about who's pitching no-hitters in baseball. So that being said, I guess that's this family that kind of liked sports, I'm sure that had a lot to do with why my sister Cindy started playing baseball and football in vacant lots. And of course, if she played, and I'm the little sister, I had to play too. Not that I could never play as well, but that kind of led me to start playing on my own. So at an early age, I fancied becoming an archer. Yeah, I was 4, okay? And then, I suppose, when I turned 8 and got my safari outfit, I wanted to be a mighty hunter. And then, what about this? Okay, so I've done a couple of mini triathlons, and then I go, where did you get this, all right? What got you there? Well, when I was 2, I got a trike, and when I was 8, I got a bike. And just in case, most of you don't know this, the Western Flyer came from the Western Auto Store. You didn't have Sports Authority, you didn't have Dick's, you didn't have any of the sporting goods stores. You had the Western Auto, and you could buy a car battery or a baseball bat. That's kind of where you got your sporting goods equipment, all right? At any rate, those probably set the precedent for, a little bit of interest in sports. But in the 1950s, where I was from in Liberty, they had a little league baseball team for boys, but they didn't have any summer programs, any summer sport programs for girls, and we didn't even have a swimming pool. So when I was about 5 or 6, my dad and some other men in the town of Liberty organized and made a capital investment to purchase part of a cow pasture and build a swimming pool. And then they went ahead, and the next year they hired a pool manager who started and coached a swimming team and diving team, which I was able to join as a 6-year-old. So one of the things Dad was as a chairman of the board is he made our starting blocks. So these aren't the blocks he made, but that's what we used, all right, just to let you know. So when it says off the block without goggles, well, now you know what kind of block I'm talking about, all right? He had these big square plywood boxes with a little bit of carpet taped on top. Those are going to be our starting blocks. And I want you to look at those lane ropes. Sayori, notice those lane ropes, all right? Those were what we used to separate our lanes. And not only that, I just wanted to check out here if I miss anything. We had these lovely swimsuits too. They were made out of cotton. There was no such thing as spandex, all right? You could drag the whole pool and water weight with you if you wanted to. And not only that, this was the only goggle I had ever seen in my life. It was on a sea hunt. Right. So when it says off the blocks without Google or goggles, we'll get back to the Google in a little while. But anyway, I did not have any of those wonderful things that you had, but I had a swimming pool. We didn't have the scientific equipment, we didn't have the aerodynamic apparel, but we boys and girls were able to compete in swimming and diving as children. So a few years later, there's my team. And just in case you wondered who I am, I circled it. All right. And that was great fun as a child, and it really does teach you discipline. And most of the children in my age group didn't have those kinds of opportunities. So I was always blessed for that experience in the 1950s. A few years later, there was a lady in our town of Liberty, Mrs. Jerry Summers. And I didn't draw the pictures. Let me circle it for you if I can hold my hand still. So that's me right there. And that's me right there. Here. And right over there. See? You're kind of little. You were pretty tight right there, right? Sit over there. So Mrs. Jerry Summers started a summer girls softball team, and it represented the entire town, which was about 8,000, 9,000 people. We had 15 girls, ages 8 to 17, and we represented the whole town. And we played other towns. There wasn't leagues. It was just, Jerry put it together. We used to go around and play other towns. Ellie, you can appreciate that. Okay. I usually play right field because that's where you put your worst player. You get the fewest number of hits. You're less likely to not see where the ball goes. All right. and chase it down. But one time, we had a home game, and I got to move to left field, which is a big deal, because that's where the ball was going to go. Right? And I was playing the left field, and it was at the elementary school. We didn't get to play on the city park, we played at the elementary school field. And I was looking at with my glasses on, running for the fly ball. Foul fly ball. And sure enough, I clotheslined myself on a guide wire to a telephone pole. Just whoop, boom. That was it. They moved me back to right field. But those two summer sports were the only athletic teams that allowed girls to play in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. Those were the only sports that girls could play. And we could sit in the bleachers, and we could watch the boys play if we wanted to, but that was about it. When I went to junior high and senior high school, we could be in the pep club, or you could smoke and get kicked out of the pep club. But that's the kind of the extent. But I did. I went to the games. I watched the men play. I watched the boys play. And that's because I love sports. It may not have been me dribbling the ball or kicking goal, but I got to watch sports. And so, yeah, I didn't know that and someday all of you women that are now in athletics and have got the opportunity that you would get that. And I'll talk later, but you are so fortunate, and I'm so happy you get to do that. And I am not in any way begrudging that opportunity. But at any rate, there was one sport that I was able to play as a child, and I think it's because we wore skirts. So in high school, in Rarity, we got to play tennis as the only sport they had school boards let girls play in the 1960s because you wore little skirts and you stayed on opposite sides of the net. There was no contact. You wouldn't really get hurt. Upon high school graduation, I went to the University of Missouri at Columbia. And not knowing what major to study or what career I could pursue, I decided that physical education seemed appropriate for somebody who loved sports. And I was in my junior year, by the way, 1972, when Title IX was passed. But it would be years before the teeth were put in Title IX. We were able to enforce it. So the theory is if you got federal money, you had to have equal opportunities for girls. So fine, but what if you didn't? We don't know. You just should. Okay. So later on, they actually found a way to make people stand up, pay attention that equal opportunities means more than just we're going to put out a coach and you can go show up. Okay. Anyway, I finished my bachelor's degree and started teaching. I began my career as a junior high school teacher of health and physical education. And I also got to coach some girls' sports at that time. And there was I got to be a tennis coach for the girls' high school, and I got to be a track and field coach at the high school for 3 years. So tennis was easy to coach. It had less than 10 girls on the team, and the courts already had lines on them and were accessible. Now you're going to see why I make that point. When I went to coach track, I had 30 or 40 girls. We had a cinder track, and I said that to somebody, and they said, "What's a cinder track?" And I'm like, it's not rubber, all right, but it's rock, all right. And whenever I had a track meet, I had to line the track, all right. I got to a single line liner. America, you know what I'm talking about, absolutely. So I got to line my own track for anytime we had a home meet. All of that, I got $350 stipend for tennis, and I got a $350 stipend for track. The men, you can kind of see, men, is that men? Yeah, okay. The men had 4 coaches. The highest paid made $1,500, I made $350. The lowest paid of their 4 coaches made $500. And so they had 1/4 the amount of work and 4 times the salary. That was equity, okay, just to let you know, that was equitable. But you know what? I just want you to know that I thought I had died and gone to heaven because I was coaching girls' sports. You couldn't have pried me away from the opportunity to work with girls and teach girls athletics, knowing what I didn't have and what they now have. So it was just a great time. I thought I died in heaven. I said, what I want to make a comment right here, not on my journey, but I would say that most boys resented girls competing at that time because it was taking some of the attention away from them. It was like, what? You're not going to sit and watch me wrestle? You're actually going to go play volleyball? How can you do that? All right? There was a little bit of that going on. But the boys' coaches were very supportive. You know why? They had kids. They wanted their girls to be able to play sports. The athlete themselves was a little bit jealous. But the parents, the men coaches were like, yeah, this is good. And along that line, is that it? Yeah. The quote right there at the bottom is Billie Jean King, after she made this Battle of the Sexes movie. She said she had men coming around to her and they would say, I never understood. I didn't understand until I had a daughter. And once you had a daughter, you knew it was the right thing to do. You knew you wanted your girl to be able to play sports, even if you didn't have girls in the stands watching you. Okay? So I coached high school girls track and tennis for 3 years. I won some conference championships. I had a few girls qualify for district and state meets. And after that, I decided I shouldn't stay in the junior high teaching anymore because I was going to kill a kid. All right. There were some things that James said about my personality that doesn't work well with junior high children. Okay. And so I thought, well, let's go get a master's degree, all right? Maybe I can start working with a little bit higher mentality, right? So I went to the University of Arizona in Tucson and got a master's degree in exercise and sports science. And while I was there, I continued to teach as a graduate teaching assistant. I taught swimming classes, I taught softball, and I taught tennis. And by the way, for any of you who are in the audience, if you can do activities, you can get a graduate teaching assistantship and then waive your out-of-state tuition and they'll pay you a stipend. So keep those skills in mind when you're going to go to graduate school, right? After that, I moved to Hays, Kansas, because I could be a teacher and a coach at a university level. I went to teach at Fort Hays State University in Hays, Kansas. So some of you who have ever been on I-70 and you got stranded in a snowstorm, that's where it is, right? Melanie and I both said, nobody should ever have to spend any time more than one night in Hays, Kansas. But I spent 5 years there, all right? In the early 1980s, Title IX was beginning to have some enforcement penalties, so girls and women's sports grew dramatically. While I was there, I taught some physical activity classes, and I taught physical education kinesiology classes, but I was also the women's softball coach. There's softball. And then I also coached men's and women's tennis. And you can see I did that for 5 years in Kansas. And then I had to, eventually I needed to make a career decision to become either a full-time coach at a larger institution or become a full-time professor at a university. And I just decided to remain teaching in the exercise science field, so I needed to go back and get another degree. And I went to the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque. And once again, I got a graduate teaching assistantship where I was teaching activity classes and paying for my out-of-state tuition and getting, the opportunity to take classes with a pretty good stipend. Now, mind you, I started my degree or my doctoral classes in 1983, and Google still wasn't around. So when I did my studying, I really went to the library. Right? I really found periodicals. I really found them in the stacks of the library. You walked your butt down the hill and went in, right? And I didn't sit in my office and just go, Google, find this. And not only does it find it for you, it reads it to you. Okay? So, not that I'm complaining. I love that Google told me how long this speech would take if I gave it how many words was in it. All right? But anyway. Of course, that was if I was reading it. I'm talking it, and it's going to take a little bit longer, sorry. But I loved I really did love studying and learning about the human body's physiological functioning during exercise and the adaptations that training makes on it, and the effects that all of our activities do. And every week, I still do, every week I will continue to read some new research and findings about the amazing human body and exercise and sports science literature. It is a perfect discipline for those who love sports. As I say here, it's the perfect discipline to study and teach for a girl who started off playing sandlot baseball and swimming without goggles. It's my perfect field of study. Maybe that's why I love it so much, is that background that I have. I finished my doctoral dissertation on the effectiveness of cardiac rehabilitation programs, because I also wasn't just a graduate teaching assistant. I became an aide and worked in cardiac rehab my last 2 years while I was at the University of New Mexico. And the following year, though, after I finished my dissertation in 1988, I got a 1-year opportunity to direct a cardiac rehab program at the University of Arizona in Tucson, so I moved back to Tucson for another year. After a while, they decided they couldn't really afford to run this outpatient clinic for cardiac rehab, so I was back in the job market, and I saw this flyer on a bulletin. That's how we got job notices. I went to a bulletin board, on a career services bulletin board, and I didn't go into LinkedIn and any of the other fun little places, but I saw this flyer, and it says, Weber State College looking for in the health and physical education department. And I was like, where is that place? And I said, Ogden. I said, where the heck is Ogden? So I got out my map, not my Google map, I got out a map, an atlas of the United States, and I found Salt Lake, and I found Ogden, and I said, well, I don't know if I'm going to go there or not. And it was like, do you have a job? No. Maybe you should. Okay. So in 1989, I took a job at Weber State College. I realized that I am passionate about teaching and teaching people who want to learn about exercise and sport, and this is about as good as it can get. So I've been teaching here for over 29 years. I'm doing good, by the way. I'm only at 40 minutes. So I've been here teaching for 29 years. I began teaching physical activity classes, healthy lifestyle. I know, Mike, they let me teach. I did have a bachelor's degree in health education, anyway. And I also taught kinesiology that first year. And eventually, they let me in. What I really wanted to teach was exercise physiology, all right? Not just kinesiology, but exercise phys. And I was able to teach both kines and exercise phys for a long period of time. And like many of you faculty that are here, during my 29 years, I've created and taught a broad swath of types of classes and courses. And our programs have grown, and our majors have grown, and our department got so big that we split. And that has created a lot of opportunities for more students to take our major and our major classes. And that's just been so fun to watch that grow. While I've been here, and it's not about tooting my horn, I just want you to know how I know so many people. And it's because I volunteered and I wanted to get on all the committees. I've been on every single faculty senate committee that they've ever had. I received the Faculty Governance Award because there wasn't anything that I hadn't been a part of at some point in time in those years. I served on the executive committee for Faculty Senate for 6 years. And I guess one of the things that I was real happy to do, I served on the athletic board for many years, and I've been the chair of the athletic board for, I don't know, a lot of years. I was the faculty athletic representative from 2001 until 2011, and that was also before the internet had all of the checking of incoming athletes, by the way. Just, where's my athletics people, okay? Compliance, yeah. We had papers, and we had file cabinets, right? We walked the papers around campus, and I had to check up on everyone. So things changed in the last few years. Things have changed a lot. Some of them better, some of them not so good. But I think the thing that I am the most proud of since I've been at Weber State is I was awarded Master Teacher Award, a Crystal Crest Master Teacher Award. And the reason I value that so much is the students nominated me. And that was the award that students nominated me, and then they voted on me, and I got that award. And I thought, cool. They don't just think I'm hard-assed, all right? They actually appreciate some of that push. Some of them appreciated that push that I gave them. They didn't just be afraid of me. Because as anybody who's been in my class knows, I growl real hard, but I'll love you to death. I will work my butt off to get you to learn and to move with me through the discipline and get you to where we need to get to. And I think I'm seeing some head nods out there. So just that kind of thing. I wanted you to know the ride here at Weber State has been so fun. Okay, so when I came, it was Weber State College. We were on a quarter system, and now in 2018, the spring of 2018, will be my last semester teaching at this institution. What lays ahead? I don't know. Someone pointed at me next, and I said, well, I could teach again. I just don't want to do another annual report. And if the 5-year report is due next year, and say, Ori, it's on you, girl. I'll help. No, I'm not going to leave you hanging. But at any rate, and there's other parts of jobs that people don't like, but most of mine has just been so fun and so great to be on. So, I got to get to my 4th page because I'm getting there. All right. What is my legacy? After 43 years of teaching exercise and sports science to over 10,000 students from ages 12 to 50, here's my takeaway message. And they're going to pop up kind of faster than what I taught, so bear with me. What message do I want you to take away? Move. Move. That's your takeaway message. We were built to move. Move every day. Move some, often. Don't ever sit stationary for more than 30 minutes. So you know what you might want to do right now. Any of you need to kind of stand up, shake out your butt, please do. All right? Stand up, shake out your butt a little bit. Get, stomp your legs. That's right. Stomp your legs. Good. All right? There is so much research and scientifically based evidence that's been done and is being done about exercise and physical activity benefits. Movement is not just a good thing for humans to do, it's essential. It is absolutely essential. It is what we need in our lives as human beings. I've listed 4 things, not necessarily in order of importance, but possibly. The number 1 thing we need is love. Nobody lives, nobody thrives without love. Given and taken. Be willing to give it, be willing to take it. Number 2, sleep. Restore your brain, restore your body. Those of you that are training physically, all the magic happens in your sleep. You work like a dog at the gym, the restore comes in when you sleep. So be sure you get to sleep. Number 3, Joe and Jenny, food. Right? And try to do it nutritiously. All right? But number 4 is movement. Move not just to avoid every major malady that is killing today's population, but move to enjoy the kinesthetic experience. Because it's not just a drudgery. It is so fun to move. Your body loves moving. It may hurt a little bit right now, Forrest, but it still wants to move. All right? Chase a golf ball around a golf course. Play pickleball. Yeah, pickleball. Swim, bike, run, perform a triathlon, or just get a dog from the rescue and hike with them. These are my kids. They're all rescue dogs. This was my first set. Sydney and Charm, and there is Honey and Storm, and they're at home right now. Sad that I'm not there. They get to go for a walk later today. All right. Second point. If you're being treated inequitably or unequally, don't just sit around and whine and complain. You only have so much energy in your life. You have to be positive. Do not focus on negativity. There is no reason. Yeah, I didn't get to play, but what am I going to do? whine and bitch and moan and bury my head. No, I'm going to go to the sports and I'm going to support the men and I'm going to keep trying to see that I get a foot in the door someday. Someday I'm going to get a foot in the door. I didn't have the prerogative to play basketball, golf, soccer, softball, volleyball, or swim, or run on a track team in the secondary schools or college, but I could play tennis, and so I did. I could also become a physical education teacher, a coach, a role model, and a mentor to hundreds of women and men in this field of exercise and sports science. So I did what I could to let you know that we women can lead the way too. Strive for inclusion. Back up. Strive for inclusion and equality. Just because you're excluded, don't let that be the end of it. Be sensitive to others who have been excluded. Be aware of your privilege. If you have a privilege and other people don't have it, look out. Look around you. See what they can't do. See if you can help them. There's a really neat video about the Kona, the triathlon, the Ironman. And this woman is from Iran. And she had moved to England. And she trained and trained and trained, and she wanted to represent Iran in a Olympic event, I think it was, and they wouldn't let her because when you compete, you have to be covered, and she didn't have the apparel, and they wouldn't let women play. They said, no, you can't show because, and so she, out of her own finances, she found a biomechanist, by the way, who created her attire that she could swim an Ironman triathlon in. And she stayed covered, and she got to represent Iran. It's a marvelous video if you ever want to Google that, okay? But don't let it be the end. Keep pushing for it. Find another way to get in the door. And when you are already on the privileged side, look out at who you might be keeping out. Just make sure that you aren't keeping anybody out unconsciously. That's number 4. Be passionate about what you do for a living. Believe you can make a difference. You can. My exercise science people, you can make people move and they'll be happy forever. They will. Teach them how to dance, Natalie, they love it. All right? Teach them to play sports, they're going to love it. Teach them to do weightlifting, they're going to love it. Just be passionate about it. Know that what you're doing is important. And bring your best every day. Every day you go, I don't care. You don't have to love doing annual reports. But when you show up with a passion that everybody knows you're there and you mean business and they're important to you. What I do is important to me, so by gosh, you're important to me. All right? That's something else. And the last thing is be compassionate and be kind. And James mentioned that, and kind of, you mean you can tell? At any rate, I'm going to go back to this book here, and I need to tell you a little story, what taught me about being compassionate. So I began today's lesson describing my experience of the last lecture with this textbook. But that's not why I keep it right next to me at my desk. This is right next to my desk. It's never very far away from me. And it's not because of Randy Pausch's message. So I was flying from Salt Lake City to Kansas City over fall break in 2008 to visit my 84-year-old mother. And she was struggling with assorted ailments, health problems, and the last one that really kind of did the number was COPD. And I brought this book with me to immerse myself in, and one of the reasons I wanted to immerse myself was because I didn't want to do any more grading of student papers. I was just kind of like, I'm going to go read. I'm not going to grade that lab write-ups, and I'm not going to grade the resumes that I still haven't graded. But I wanted to isolate myself from all the worries and the hassles ahead of me. So I boarded the plane in Salt Lake, and I had a middle seat. And I was sitting next to a very large woman who was sitting in the window seat. So what do? You kind of scooch in and then you try to become low, okay? Because somebody else is kind of half in the chair. So I'm a little irritated, all right? But that's just the way it is. All right, I'm a little irritated that I paid for a seat and I only got a half. But at any rate, I pulled out my book, squeezed in my arms and elbows, and I continued reading the section in this book called Adventures and Lessons Learned section. But the window woman, was really chatty. She starts chatting it up, all right? Not only that, but she was constantly getting in the bag that was stowed supposedly under her feet, but it was right in the middle of her feet. And she kept rattling plastic and munching along the way, and I'm reading, and she's munching, and then she keeps asking things. She began with marveling at the sunbeams that broke through the clouds on the western sky. Next thing she wanted to ask me about was, why? No, she said, well, is that the Salt Lake? And yeah. And she said, well, look at that vast dry bed area. And I said, yeah, okay. And then we take off, and we're flying, and the next thing she wants to know is, why are the mountains so brown? Why aren't they green? And so on it went. So after about 20 to 30 minutes of short responses from me, she finally got quiet for about an hour. She didn't keep trying to be chatty, and I got into my book. So how far did I get? I got it over here. I made it to a chapter that is called A Recovering Jerk. All right? And serious, it's true. And that window woman interrupted me again, and she said, I'll show you what it is. I think I will. There's my book. And there's my bookmark. And what does she say to me? She says, I made this bookmark for you. It matches the color of your book cover. Well, it was at this time I closed my book. And the remainder of the flight, I learned of her trip from Seattle to Kansas City, that her coworkers had purchased for her, and her boss had helped her buy. And they had to do that because she didn't have the finances on her own. And she was moving, and she was on her way to Kansas City to see her dying father and help him move to hospice. It was the first and last time she would see him in 20 years. And I listened, and she talked. And I learned a lesson. And I want you to learn that lesson too, if I can tell you that. May you always be open to listening, and your heart be tender enough to care. Thank you for listening to me today, in the past, and today, and being tender enough to care and be here today. Thank you.